Good.
All right. So my name is Adam Gerber, and I teach computer science here at the University of Chicago in the master's program. Let's see, I've been developing mobile applications for the last about 2.5 years exclusively. I'm actually writing a book on Android Studio, which is due out in about 6 months. And I also teach Android here at the university, so those are kind of my mobile credentials. So I want to tell you the story about the Divinity School professor here at the University of Chicago. And our good professor wants to know if there's a God. So he opens up a terminal session, and he asks, is there a God? No answer. So he talks to the president of the university, and he figures out a way to network all of the computers together at the University of Chicago. And he pulls up the terminal session and asks, is there a God? No answer. So, undeterred, our good professor networks all of the computers in the world together and asks, is there a God? And this time, there's an answer. There is now. Okay, so I want to start out with this rather pedestrian piece of hardware called a laptop. And the laptop has quietly overtaken the desktop as the dominant computing form factor in the last couple of years. And the reason is simple. Laptops have attained performance parity with their larger desktop cousins for the vast majority of applications. So, which means that having a desktop versus a laptop is actually a liability. And just as a show of hands, how many of you use your laptop pretty much all the time? Do you? Okay, so I figured. I need to have a dock at home, and I've got like 3 big monitors, and I have no reason to buy a desktop, and I probably won't ever buy a desktop again. Now, here's this kind of the stats and projections into the future. But it's important to note that all of this happened without much fanfare. No one told you to stop buying desktop computers and start buying laptop computers. It happened all on its own. Okay, and that's kind of the beauty and power of economic forces. They're the result of aggregate individual choices. Now, we all know that Moore's law is relentless. And by the way, if you're expecting that kind of hockey stick that we kind of expect from Moore's law, keep in mind that the y-axes here are logarithmic. What this slide says is that as the transistors on microprocessors get more tightly packed, the feature size decreases. So there's kind of this inverse relationship. So as Moore's law continues, we get smaller and smaller hardware. And in the not too distant future, I would say around 2020, mobile computers will reach performance parity with your personal computer. And at that point, mobile computers will be the dominant form factor for computing. Now, the important thing to remember about this coup is that no one will orchestrate it, just like the coup that happened with the laptop over the desktop. It'll happen all by itself. I actually have this wonderful slide, and I'm going to show it to you later. Now, a lot of people have weighed in to proclaim the end of the PC era, including Steve Jobs here. But I think the event that really signaled the beginning of the end for the PC era was the release of Windows 8. And Microsoft did something very bold, and at the risk of alienating most of its users. In fact, many, including myself, would characterize this as desperate. They basically released what is essentially a mobile operating system onto a PC desktop. Okay? And what's really happened over the last decade, Apple and Google have been undertaking this blue ocean strategy to reach users in a completely new and therefore uncontested hardware platform called the smartphone. And Microsoft now finds itself in the very unenviable position of interloper to a market that is currently dominated by Android and iOS. Now, ironically, even though the PC age is the personal computer age is over, the next stages will be far more personal in its character than the personal computing age. Okay, great. So our computers are shrinking. What about the human factors? Thankfully, our hands are not going to exponentially decrease with the computers. So what are our computers going to look like in the future? Are they going to be just miniature versions of our laptops? Are we going to all be walking around with BlackBerries with little keyboards on them? And the answer is definitely not. I believe what's going to happen is you're going to see these fractures into tiers. So you're going to, on the top tier, you're going to have the presentation tier with all the human-sized peripherals like augmented reality glasses, earbuds, monitors, all the things that you and I interface with all day long. And then on the middle tier is going to be your mobile device. And then, of course, and the bottom tier is going to be the cloud where most of your data resides. Now, this is the part of the presentation where I actually show you a video.
Take out your Android phone. Go ahead, I'll wait. The odds are good that it's a nice piece of hardware. It probably has a quad-core processor, gigabytes of memory, and a battery powerful enough to jumpstart a car. We're all walking around with these technological marvels in our pockets. But the problem is, we're mostly just using them to text our sweetie or call our parents. And if we're feeling really adventurous, maybe we'll throw some cartoon birds at cartoon pigs. That kind of seems like a waste, doesn't it? Now, do me another favor and go find a computer. It's probably got a quad-core processor, gigabytes of memory. Is this sounding familiar? Your phone is a computer. You have all that data in your phone, and mostly the same data in your PC, yet never the two shall meet. You're leading this double life, and you really don't have to. In a perfect world, you'd need only one device. The all-powerful handsome sorcerers at Ubuntu think that perfect world should be a reality. That's why they took your phone, that's as powerful as a PC, and decided to put a PC right inside of it. Shazam. Ubuntu for Android is born. It's not literally magic, but it's kind of close. Your quad-core handset is a phone when it's unplugged, but when you connect it to a monitor and keyboard, boom, you've got yourself a full Ubuntu-powered computer. Picture this. You're working on a spreadsheet or writing an email at work, but it's quitting time, so you unplug and can take it on the go. No syncing voodoo is required, since the phone is the PC. And it's not all boring work stuff either. You can use the desktop to browse your photos, videos, for music, email, to utilize many browsing tabs, to sync your address book, any part of your digital life. And since your PC is a phone, you can make calls or send SMS from the Ubuntu desktop. And hey, it's Ubuntu, so you know it's going to be fast, fresh, and virus-free. Not to mention the thousands of desktop apps available to run on your phone. All of a sudden, that double life becomes a single life, and your awesome phone just got more awesome. There's no reason to...
Okay, so that's one vision of the future of mobile computing, and I think that's pretty accurate. Now, the problem with running Ubuntu on your Android device is you need a rooted device to do it. So most people don't have rooted devices, and so unless you have a Nexus phone or a Nexus tablet, you can't really do this unless you void your warranty and root your phone. But I think this is a vision of the future that it will eventually come to pass. Right. So now I'm going to pivot a little bit, and I have two contradictory statements up here, and would ask you which one of them is true. Is technology tyrannical or is it subversive? Both. So, if technology is concentrated in the hands of too few, technology tends to be tyrannical. And if it's widely distributed, it tends to be subversive. So there is this inherent struggle between the individual and the state for control of technology. And I think the best place to start our discussion of the politics of technology is a project called the Encyclopedia, which is probably the most emblematic document of the Enlightenment. And the Encyclopedia was first published in 1751 by two guys named Diderot and D'Alembert. And it was different from anything that came before it for several reasons. First of all, it was a compilation of many, many contributors, including such luminaries as Voltaire, Montesquieu, and Rousseau. But the other thing that made the encyclopedia unique was its emphasis on the mechanical arts. It didn't even have a word for technology. Basically, if you think about the Industrial Revolution, those were the most important technologies of that day. And the encyclopedia was richly illustrated, and it covered topics like anatomy, biology, zoology. It covered arts and architecture. Most importantly, it covered technology. And so you would see articles on, here you see a pin factory, and you'll notice that all of these little illustrations have figures which describe in detail all of how the workings of this pin factory happen, including all the tools and machines that you would need to run it. Now, the encyclopedia was originally banned by Louis XV because he felt, justifiably so, that disseminating such information was subversive to royal power. However, with some political maneuvering, the editors were able to finally publish. And in fact, if you look at this slide right here, you can see at the very bottom it says, with the approval and the read it here, and privilege of the king. Now, these are the last two kings of France. Louis XV on the left, Louis XVI on the right. Most historians agree that the encyclopedia was a major contributing factor to the French Revolution, which brought down the most powerful monarchy in the world at the time. Let's fast forward 150 years to the United States. Like France, the United States is profoundly influenced by the ideas of the Enlightenment, and in fact, the United States continues to enact an Enlightenment agenda, both domestically and abroad. But think about the post-war period, 1950s and 1960s. Technology at that time had been concentrated into the hands of the few. So technology was really epitomized by huge state mega projects like the Manhattan Project and the Apollo program. And computers at that time were way too expensive. They were basically, you had to be a big corporation like IBM, or you had to be the government to really use a computer. Basically, individuals were really alienated from technology. And the distrust in technology was so profound that when news planes flew over Woodstock, rumors spread that the government was seeding the clouds so that it would rain and spoil the festival for everyone. Well, it did rain, but those news planes were not seeding the clouds. They were just trying to cover a story. But that was the zeitgeist of that era. Now, around that same time, some of those same hippies were envisioning ways that technology could be used as a tool for self-sufficiency. And one of those hippies was a guy named Stuart Brand, who's pictured here on the left. And probably Brand's greatest contribution was a catalog called the Whole Earth Catalog. And Brand was part of Ken Kesey's Merry Pranksters, and they would travel around in this magic bus and get high, whatever, drop LSD. And if you take a look at the pages of the Whole Earth Catalog, you would find that it looks remarkably like the encyclopedia. Now, the Whole Earth Catalog attempted to rethink the way technology could be used as a tool to liberate individuals from the tyranny of an oppressive government. And this was really targeted to hippie communes and individuals who were interested in alternative kinds of things. So you would find alternative medicines, you would find all kinds of ways to get off the grid and produce your own power. You would find kits on how to, this is the Dymaxion car, Bucky Fuller's Dymaxion car. You've got plans to create buckyball houses. There were kits for ham radios, all kinds of ways aiming at people who were interested in self-sufficiency, getting off the grid. Now, these two guys were part of that countercultural movement too, a little bit young for that. But Woz and Jobs, they were hippies. They were like long-haired hippies. They were mischievous hackers and who flaunted authority. They, in fact, one of their first inventions was a phreaking device that would allow you to tap into the phone networks and make free calls. And they had a different vision for technology, and I think that's the vision that most of us share today. When you think about technology, you don't think about the Manhattan Project or big oppressive government. You think about a bunch of 20-somethings, playing ping pong and hacking away at their desks. Now let's fast forward 40 years from Woodstock to Burning Man. And just a quick show of hands, anyone been to Burning Man? No, got to make the pilgrimage. So Burning Man is this arts and music festival that happens every Labor Day weekend in the Nevada desert. Just to be clear, the Woodstock and Burning Man festivals have an awful lot in common. They're both about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But they have a profoundly different attitude towards technology. Whereas at Woodstock, technology was feared, at Burning Man, technology is revered. And the only flying objects you're likely to find at Burning Man are the jets of the Silicon Valley jet set who frequently attend there. Now, if Diderot and D'Alembert were to come back today, they would immediately recognize their project. But they would also see that their struggle that they undertook is ongoing. And so we're starting to see some of the backlash to the NSA snooping of late, as people are starting to realize that their privacy is under attack. Now, one of the greatest threats to government now is that technology could potentially undermine their ability to tax. Now, you might say that is a victory for freedom. However, with no taxes, there's no government. And depending on what your politics are, we can argue about how much government we need to have, but we still need government. We still need roads and bridges. We still need police. We still need a legal system, etc. In fact, I just got an email this morning about Bitcoin and how it's being used to launder money and engage in all kinds of criminal activities. But here's the deal. If you engage in an ex-governmental transaction, you have no legal recourse if it goes sour. So now it's great to think, oh, well, it'll be just like Craigslist. Everyone will play by the rules. And, of course, I'm just going to transfer this $10 million over to this company in China or wherever else, and poof, it disappears. So I think Bitcoin is very interesting, and I think it's a welcome advance, cryptocurrencies. But I think we ought to be very circumspect about these kinds of things. So I want to pivot again and talk about market information. Now, I just want to say that I think all information tends to move from centers of power and institutions out to the periphery. But the most interesting kind of information is market information, because as it spreads, it creates these Schumpeter-like waves of creative destruction that are really interesting to observe. Now, Francis Bacon once said that knowledge is power. I want to deconstruct that statement a little bit. So we currently live in a world that is drowning in information. But information is only potential knowledge, and knowledge is only potential power. Before information can become power, it needs to be appropriated. You need to understand it. You need to basically learn it. Once you've learned it and it becomes knowledge, now you can go out into the world and wield that new power, hopefully. And you've got these feedback loops. This is not Peter Senge's learning organization here, but now I want to start with a very simple example, and probably one that you are familiar with, and that has to do with the retail chain. Now, prior to the widespread use of computers, the producers had most of the power in the retail distribution chain. And they did the market research. They knew as best as anyone could how their products might sell, and they would basically dictate the terms to the retailers. Then you all know what happened. The retailers started to get smart about collecting information. And Walmart is kind of the canonical example. Because Walmart is not just a retail company, they're a very sophisticated IT and logistics company as well. And pretty soon, the retailers had amassed a tremendous amount of power. And now, if you want to sell your product to Walmart, you you have to go there and negotiate with them. And I've heard they're very tough negotiators. And the reason is they know exactly what your profit margins are and how much your product is likely to make them before you even walk into the room. So what's happening now is that market information is becoming more and more widely available. It's moving out to the periphery. And that means markets are becoming more and more efficient. That's good news for us, consumers. And we're moving to a world of market information parity. Now, I want to qualify that statement and suggest that market information parity is an asymptotic state, one that we can never fully realize. But nevertheless, we are moving in that direction. And successful companies are really facilitating and accelerating this trend. And I would argue that every single successful business model since the commercialization of the internet is engaged to this end. Culling, sorting, collecting, analyzing, redistributing, and most importantly, facilitating access to information. Information that had previously been inaccessible. Now, just anecdotally, I was getting my car serviced at the Ford dealership, and I wanted to inquire about trading in my Focus for an Escape. And so I sat down with the sales lady, and of course I had my phone with me, and I pulled up Kelley Blue Book, and I was like, I know exactly how much this Escape is going to cost me, and I know exactly how much my car is worth. I'm like, so you're telling me you want to make $3,000 on this transaction? I don't think so. But it was so one-sided. I actually walked away kind of feeling sorry for the poor sales lady because I felt, how are they going to make money that all this information is totally available? I mean, I figured, if they want to charge me, they want to make $500,000, maybe even $1,000 on this transaction, it's a convenience factor. I'll just let them do all the paperwork and everything done. But it was actually pretty one-sided. I knew coming in exactly what my car was worth, what the car that I wanted to buy was worth. It was a no contest, basically. Now, this is a slide that shows the number of hedge funds in the United States. And you can see, and this is actually stale data because the trend is reversed now, it's gone back up. And it used to be that you needed a team of analysts crunching numbers and a team of traders to execute the trades and a team of clerks to clear the trades. In essence, you need to be a large institution and with a lot of resources to have a hedge fund. Today, that's not really the case at all. You can have a dozen people with a few $1 million under management. All you really need is a few quants, a few programmers, preferably people who know both, and a fast connection to the internet and a few servers in your business. And the thing that's really interesting about this trend is not only because the stakes are so high, but because most of this activity has been delegated to software agents. And I believe this is a precursor of our economic future. And when you think about it, there are basically three things that are going on here. An agent is gathering market information, relating that information to other market information, as well as historical market data, and then executing trade orders often as fast as possible. So that should remind you of that slide I just showed you a little while ago, with our Monopoly guy. It's a very similar kind of process, right? This is the process that you and I will undertake to acquire information and turn it into knowledge and then use that knowledge to go out into the world and make better decisions. So a lot of that now is being delegated to these software agents. And the other thing you should realize is that in none of those steps is a human anywhere close as beating a computer. Now, let me ask you something. How much do you think you can learn in your lifetime? How many books can you read? How many degrees can you accumulate? How much physical energy do you have to learn? The fact of the matter is that all of us are mortal, and there's only so much energy that we have. How much can a software agent know? The answer is a lot more than you can. Now, you're probably telling yourself at this point, well, my knowledge is qualitatively different from a computer, from a software agent. And in fact, you would probably be wrong. In fact, you are wrong. And I just want to show you this video.
As long as there is just compensation.
What is eminent domain?
You're right. 15,440. Go again.
Nonfiction. For 400.
In 2010, this former First Lady published the memoir Spoken from the Heart. Watson?
Who is Laura Bush?
Correct.
Legalese. For 400.
In English law, it's a title above a gentleman and below a knight. In the United States, it's usually added to the name of an attorney. Watson?
What is Esquire?
Yes.
Nonfiction. For 800.
This book by Michael Lewis, subtitled Evolution of a Game, focused on left tackle prodigy Michael Oher. Brad?
What is The Blind Side?
You got it.
Nonfiction for 2,000, please.
HBO's miniseries John Adams was based on this author's Pulitzer Prize-winning biography. Watson?
Who is David McCullough?
Correct.
Legalese. For 800.
One definition of this is entering a private place with the intent of listening secretly to private conversations.
So I just wanted to give you kind of a little preview of that. I think it's interesting. At the end of the day, it was a landslide. Watson clobbered the other two contenders, which were like champion Jeopardy players. So yes, the computers have our kind of Jeopardy. You remember, Jeopardy had the things that they ask on Jeopardy are kind of like trivia questions. You would need to like accumulate a lifetime worth of knowledge to know this stuff. Okay, so where were we? Okay, so actually, this is an interesting slide, and I want to kind of take you to Google, and we're going to do some of these searches here. So Google's actually getting very good at these kind of natural language searches, but they're pretty limited. If I go ahead and do something like this, I pull up Google and I ask it, where's the closest Thai restaurant to the Gleacher Center? It'll tell me, and it'll also give me, sort of ratings and stars and everything else. That's pretty impressive. Now, what about? I'm trying to plan my night out with friends, and so I want to know what's playing in the movies in Chicago. Again, pretty good. I can see what's happening here. If I click on this, it'll take me to the various movies, and I can see the play times of the various places of the place that I asked it, Chicago in this case. Okay, that's pretty good. And then I want to go out to a quiet bar. I think probably the best descriptor there is 5-star hotel. And I can see the various 5-star hotels, bars near River North. And they're all ranked, and I can take a look at those and probably end up going to the peninsula or whatever. So those are all interesting searches, but I couldn't, for example, ask Google to plan my night, by itinerary yet. That kind of semantic search is what we're anticipating in sort of the next iteration of the web. So, for example, you can kind of imagine that search, basically parcel together into this single search where I say, okay, I want to eat dinner at a fine Thai restaurant with 3 friends near the Gleacher Center around 7 p.m. Then I want to see a highly rated Hollywood movie around 8:30, and then I want to go to a quiet bar near the movie theater. What are my best options? Now, if you spin that agent, you will eventually be able to see something that returns a bunch of itineraries. That's coming soon, okay? And then, of course, you would just say, book itinerary 6, and send confirmation emails to my friends. Done. That's really kind of the next iteration, the semantic web that we're anticipating. Now, there's a lot of barriers to making those kinds of web searches a reality. The first is that computers are notoriously have a difficult time processing natural language. They're much better at structured data like XML or databases, where the relationships are really rigidly defined. And there's a lot of debate about how we can and should facilitate the semantic web by going back and retrofitting websites so they can be more easily read by machines. And that would involve basically including XML tags, essentially, to the content of the data information that you wouldn't see, but the bots, the agents that were crawling the websites could. Now, the other approach is just to say, well, the computers are going to eventually be smart enough, and they'll be able to read natural language just as well as you and I can. And I think we're going to see kind of a hybrid world. So shortly, we're going to see a lot of commercial websites structuring data that can be read by computers. And we're already starting to see that with service-oriented architecture. And then you're going to see, I mean, the Facebooks and the individual websites are probably not going to have these machine-readable tags, except that they're already machine-readable because they have HTML. But a lot of this is already happening with something called service-oriented architecture, and that means essentially that that it's client agnostic. It doesn't matter if you're a website, a mobile phone, or a software agent. When you hit that endpoint, that web service, you're going to get back data, the same data that you would if you came in from a different client. And they're basically passing back, usually JSON data between the client and the server. So that's one area where mobile technology is really forcing the web to become more agnostic to the requests for data. Now, this is my, I was about to press enter on my agent, about to spin my agent here. Agents are the best employees you can have. They never strike. They don't get tired. They don't go to sleep. They're constantly learning. And most importantly, they will execute your orders with ruthless precision. Now, before you scoff at this, this is already happening. This is already happening as most of the transactions in the financial market are happening using agents. So I guess the question is, what kind of legal frameworks will we need in the world of anonymous agents? What kind of laws? What kind of where is the responsibility? And after my talk, I'd like to open it up and talk about this. And as I was about to press enter on as I was spinning my agent, I kept thinking about the original Alien movie from 1979. And where the mother is the computer on the ship, and Sigourney Weaver finds out that it's been programmed to basically terminate them because it has a different primary directive. It's been overwritten, and that primary directive now is to bring back the organism at any cost, including the crew are now expendable. So this is the dystopian vision. I don't think we're heading in that direction. I think we're going to come up with a legal framework to handle all of this traffic and all of these anonymous agents. But this is really where we're going, and we need to kind of step back and think about this brave new world. So this is a slide that you've probably already seen. It just shows the exponential growth of computers. And that Watson slide should have given you a little bit of pause, and that we are already on this curve approaching. Kurzweil says we're approaching a singularity. Other people call it the omega point. But we are approaching kind of artificial intelligence that will make financial transactions and economic decisions child's play. So I just want to recap what I've talked about here. The rise of mobile computing as the next dominant hardware platform. Technology can be both tyrannical and subversive, and there is an inherent struggle between the state and the individual for control of technology. Economic life is migrating to the internet. I think if you don't believe anything that I told you today, you will at least walk away knowing that this is true. this information parity that we talked about, this non-exclusive availability of information, and that markets will become, and already have in many cases, agent-ready, and that agents will dominate global commercial transactions. So, thank you very much, and I'd like to just open it up for discussion at this point.
Trade
Yes.
Karen.
Sorry, what?
Did you trade Karen?
No, I didn't. I didn't. Yes.
If you could just elaborate a little bit on why you're optimistic that we're heading to a good place rather than a bad place.
I think it's a matter of, it's not a foregone conclusion that we are heading in a good place. Things could go very wrong. I think there is a balance that needs to be struck between the state and the individual over technology. And it's not a foregone conclusion that it is going in the right direction. Things could spin out of control. We could end up being a klepto state, and where things really are not. It's not the kind of world that you and I would want to live in. We can start to see some of that now with this Bitcoin that's been in the news lately. And I'm not suggesting that Bitcoin is a bad thing. I think, it's interesting that around the time of the Civil War, there were hundreds of currencies floating in the United States. And the U.S. Mint only had maybe like 15%, some small percentage of the amount of currency that was in circulation in the United States. It wasn't until really during and after the Civil War that the U.S. Fed and they started to really mint their own currency. Of course, the Confederacy had their own currency. But I think we need to have a discussion about these issues. They're important issues, and we need to think about the legal framework that's going to allow us to live in such a world. This world is coming, whether we like it or not. Yes.
History has some rough lessons to teach us about first-to-market issues. If the first country that hits the first-to-market, it could be bad for other countries if it's a bad country that gets this technology moving quicker.
Yep.
What are your thoughts about that? And what are we doing?
What exactly do you mean, like nuclear technology? What do you say?
Well,
bad?
I'm more talking. I think the financial markets are going to cause more devastation than anything nuclear we can do other than just destruction of the planet. But
right.
I mean, that concerns me. I mean, control of the financial markets controls the world, right?
True. Well, currently the reserve currency is in most countries is the U.S. dollar, and a lot of countries are wary of that as we continue to inflate our currency. And so, I think they're looking at this with much interest in China and elsewhere. Although I've just heard that the Chinese government shut down. Certain banks in China shut down their transaction in Bitcoin. But anyway, you're right. I think this is a cause for concern. They just had Senate hearings on Bitcoin last week, whatever it was. And I don't think the United States is going to play a second position role. The United States is the only information technology superpower. We have tremendous resources in that area. That's to say that we couldn't be surprised by a country like China, for example, or Russia. But but you're right. Things could spin out of control, and there is a reason for concern. Yeah. I don't have a crystal ball.
No.
Yeah.
I just your insights were what was up for us. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
You spoke mainly about public life, about economics. What is your viewpoint on private life when information becomes instantly available about health, about what your ideal partner is, what the ideal pastime activity would be, or the ideal way to increase productivity? How could that play out, that information becomes closer to action in private life?
The net effect of all this information is positive for individuals. But I think there is a downside. There's a dark side. And of course, we've seen abuses of government. It doesn't have to be government that's snooping on you. It could be your best friend or whoever. Sure, I think people's the more our lives migrate to the internet, the more it's going to be out there. I mean, someone could Google me and see this presentation. I'm here for everyone to see. I've kind of put myself out there. But yeah, I think there's reason for concern. I don't know. I think the net effect of this is overwhelmingly positive. I think the fact that everyone's going to have a public life, everyone kind of already does. They have a Facebook page. They already kind of live this public life. And they try to put the best spin on it they can. But I think there's definitely a downside. What do you think is the dark side to all of this private information out there?
Yeah, I wasn't referring to the dark side. I was more concerned about or curious about how it will play out in economics. There are certain rules and agents can follow them to get to the best decisions. So in human decisions that can be optimized in health or relations or similar areas, how you think it will play out when information is always available, what would be the best to do? So if that will follow the same direction as economic decisions.
I think so. I think if you can spin an agent that helps you find the best medical treatment or find the best price on a car or whatever, you're going to do that. It's to your advantage. So the stakes are big enough where these things are definitely going to happen. So that's kind of, again, I think that there's going to be tremendous advantages to, and really the advantages will accrue to those who know how to use this technology initially. Those who are first to use this technology will have a huge advantage over those who are not using this technology. So early adopters will probably have a bit of an advantage. But I think eventually everyone's going to have access to this technology. And so it remains to be seen kind of, the thing that's interesting to me about this world that I'm describing is that we need to find a new legal framework to deal with the agents and how they interact and transact. It's already the case, for example, in financial markets, if you were a big institutional like CalPERS, like California Pension or something like that, you want to buy some stock in GE, for example. You want to take a big position. You don't want to buy large shares of GE stock because it'll tip your hand. It'll let all the smaller companies know that you're about to acquire all these stocks. And what they'll do is they'll start buying GE stocks in the hope of selling back to you at a higher price. So what they do is they spin off a bunch of agents to make these tiny little transactions and do it in kind of a random way so that no one else knows. They do it quietly as they acquire these positions. And so there's already this idea of deception. These agents are doing things that are deceptive. I mean, it's legal, but I think that's going to happen in other sectors of the economy and also in other areas of life. I think as a society we need to come up with a legal framework for dealing with this. I think that's the best way to deal with it. I don't think our answer should be great. We have all these freedoms and government's going to disappear. I think there's going to be people are going to be clamoring for government to step in and to regulate a lot of this traffic. That's my.
I'm thinking, like my background is psychology. I'm very interested in quantified self, how that will play out. And
so what was that?
Quantified self.
Quantified self?
You're not familiar?
I'm not familiar with this concept.
It's just the concept that you can, the concept of personal data, that you can measure everything in daily life, like how many steps you take, how many hours you sleep, in which sleep stages you're in, and then your weight or how you spend your time and
Sure.
everything, and how you handle this information to improve your decision. So I can see that this would become an area which can be improved by agents. But the question is if people want to listen to agents, because in economy you have immediate results and they can be massive. In personal life, it takes time to see changes in how you feel, or if it makes a big difference in your life, who you spend time with. So I'm not sure if you have any insight on how much you think people will listen to agents when it comes to decisions like this would be the ideal meal for you right now, to because I know what's happening in your body, like how stressed you are, or what your blood work is saying on a daily level, and if people would just stick with decisions in their personal life that an agent would make.
It's a great question. I suppose it depends on how good the agent is, right? If you have a medical agent that is tracking all of it, it's got like some sort of corporal telemetry device that you've connected, and you knows how you're sleeping and what the pH of your blood is and whatever else that you're tracking, and it's making recommendations about your diet and how much exercise you need and what your body mass index is and all this other stuff, and it's making recommendations about how you should live your life, it kind of calls into question your own free will and autonomy. You're being directed by this machine that's telling you what sort of what it thinks is the optimal way to live a healthy life. I guess it depends on, we think that we're connected now 24/7 with our phones, but once you go down that path, and I know I have friends that they walk around with their phones and they have a happy meter, and they record every single moment of their life. Am I happy now? Well, yes, I'm happy. Okay, and this is why. And they're spending half the time interacting with their phone. They're not actually like engaging the world. They're just engaging the cyberspace world. So that's frankly not a world that I want to live in, and I don't think that's very healthy. But I think that at some point you need to pull the plug. But having an agent that's telling you, it's making recommendations about your health, I don't have a problem with that. I think it's a great thing. It probably does a potentially better job than some of the best physicians out there, because it maybe has a lot more personal information about you, and it's knowing what the state of your body is, and maybe has more better medical history, perhaps. I don't know, but I think we are moving in that direction for sure. Now, whether or not you kind of lose your sense of self in a psychological way, or you lose your free will, I'm not sure. I think that's up to you to say enough is enough. Shut up, agent. I'm gonna shut up, Siri. I'm gonna do it myself. Yeah. Yes.
How do agents get tested? Because I'm sure there's cases already where a bunch of agents trying to work together may have taken like an entire section of the market in the wrong direction. I have an intuition that that's probably happened already, but how do you safeguard against that aggregate behavior if you just have a bunch of agents dealing with each other?
I'm not so sure. Well, the response to these flash crashes in the past was just literally stop trading. That's kind of the economic playbook. And if the market is just tumbling too fast, just pull the plug and say, hit the hammer and say stop, no more trades. Let things calm down. We'll take a deep breath. The problem is with agents, they don't take a deep breath. They put the plug back in, it just starts plummeting again, because they have one single direct optimized portfolio, period. And there is no coordinated way to test them, because these companies these are their trade secrets. They're not going to give it to underwriter laboratories to test. So I think as a society we need to think about how we can stave off these kinds of flash crashes in the future. and come up with a technological framework or whatever for dealing with this without impeding on people's economic freedom.
You talked about the need for sort of a legal and governmental framework. But I'm also wondering, what are your thoughts on the need for an ethical framework? And so I think back to the 90s when they cloned Dolly, right? And suddenly bioethics was like, oh my God, now there needs to be bioethicists everywhere. And it seems to me that really what we need, the other half of what we need from that legal framework is we need to have some sort of a technology ethics that really think about the less black and white questions and the more, when do you pull the plug, or what is the right thing to do, and at what point do you stop letting the agent make the decisions and you have to turn to human element? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's the stuff of science fiction, man. Yeah, I think we do need to have a discussion around technology ethics. I think there are actually a lot of programs, academic programs in engineering that require you to take an ethics course before you graduate. I think as a society, our future leaders, political leaders, need to be aware of these issues more than they ever have been. Now you see the United States has a cyber czar, and the military has a new, division of cyber warfare, and they're starting to gain some traction. People are starting to realize that this stuff is important, and we need to pay attention. So the question is, can we, as a society, keep up with the technology? Can our ethical, legal, and philosophical frameworks keep up with technology? And that's, I'm optimistic that it can, but again, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that it will happen that way. Things could spin out of control. The thieves and it could spin into a kind of anarchy. And that's not a world that you and I really. That's not a world we want to live in. That would be my only caveat. So I'm not clamoring for government to clamp down and regulate every area of our lives. I consider myself more of a libertarian. But I think other people are going to clamor for the government to step in when they start getting ripped off. And when, again, there's going to be this balance that needs to be struck between state controlling technology and individuals controlling technology. And what is that balance? That'll kind of have to be recalibrated as the technology progresses. I think, and we need to stay with it. We can't let it spin out of control. This has been fun. Thank you very much, and stay warm. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.